Welcome to another Imizizi conversation. I'm Mponeng, Managing Director of Imizizi. Do you know what Imizizi does?
Please elaborate.
The simplest way I could tell what Imizizi does is we help businesses, big and small, with reinforcement. And our aim is to provide quality service with a heart, of course, so that we can, build relationships and grow us and everyone that we work with. So the reinforcement is in forms of maybe like a personnel. So we do recruitment and temporary employment services, or we offer specialized skills where we do everything under the strategic consulting, business continuity management, business process management, payroll services, agile enablement. We do a lot. Management consulting. But our biggest drive is to be able to offer small businesses the opportunity to work with bigger corporates, to get the exposure and the experience. So that is us in a nutshell. So you were supposed to be more than you. We're supposed to have Absalom no Leo.
Yes.
Unfortunately, they couldn't join us. Yes. So you are standing in for all of them, for everybody. Yeah. Okay, that's good. So the Zipho, we're joined by Zipho today, Managing Director of Msabeni. It's vendor. What does it mean?
Umhlaba.
Oh.
Yes, like Umhlabeni.
Yeah, okay, yes. Makes sense.
Yes.
They run a landscaping, architecture and architectural company, am I correct?
Yes, so it's a landscaping, architecture, construction.
Okay.
Yes, company.
And the plan is to take over the world?
Well, ideally.
To change the world.
Ideally.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what you guys do and who you're about.
Alright, so a little bit about us. I think the best way to actually, I'm not even going to talk about who we are, rather than the idea of who we are. Okay. So Umsabeni is nothing but an idea. It is basically the baseline of all the things that we would like to aspire to do. Because we believe as an individual, you're not always locked down to one specific thing that you might want to do. For example, we've got guys who we're working with at the office who enjoy marketing. Some guys at the office, they enjoy literally making and selling things. So Umsabeni has now become the baseline to allow for those things to become.
All right.
So
when you're hiring people, you're not just hiring an architect. You're hiring more than that. You're looking into what it is that they want to do in order to grow, to help them grow that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the overall actual idea is that, stemming from the understanding that each person is their own individual. And sometimes there are things that we would like to achieve, but we might not necessarily have the finances to back us up to do that. So that's where Msabeni has come in. We have provided a platform for all the guys that we are working with in the company. So yes, primarily the guys have studied architecture or landscaping or project management or whatever it is that they've studied, but you'll always find, okay, this guy wants to be a designer. They're like, oh, okay, well, what kind of designing do you want to do? I want to be doing clothes, for example. We're like, okay, all right. So let's do projects, and then let's open up this branch for doing clothes, and then let's try to support you. You tell us where, and you head this thing, and you tell us what to do. So Msabeni, like I'm saying, is just it's an idea, and it's a baseline, and it's a platform, and the fundamental or core business is landscaping and architecture
and construction.
Exactly. Okay. And that basically helps to supplement every other thing.
I feel like you already went into the topic before we got there. Anyways, our topic for today is disrupting the status quo by disrupting yourself.
Okay.
So for me, status quo is the present built on a strong past, right? And I think the reason why people are comfortable with the status quo is that it's a tried and tested thing. This is a process that's been happening, it's already been there, but then growth happens.
Okay.
And a need arises.
Yeah.
And change then occurs, which by definition is disruption. What do you think are other things that actually cause people to want to disrupt the status quo?
All right. I think the first or the best point of departure is to understand why that ends up happening.
And take notes, sorry, so that I can, learn.
That's fine. I think the first thing is that we need to understand why is it that we end up wanting a change. And usually it starts with a question. And the question is, this that is being done, who decided that this is how it should be done?
Okay.
The other question that you then ask yourself is, where are we trying to go? Where are we trying to lead our country? Where are we trying to lead our people? Where do we want to find ourselves? Then you take basically what is existing and you challenge that. The question is always this. There are always preconceived ideologies that we adopt.
Yes.
And we adopt them to a point where, and it always happens. I mean, this goes throughout all facets of life. I mean, you as an individual, you as a company, you as anything, as just an entity, there are these ideologies that we have adopted, so much so that we have made them part of our lives, and we think that it is who we are. Until we decide that let us challenge or let us question even these ideas. Where do these ideas actually come from? And do they speak for me as an individual and where I want to go? So basically, if anything, to answer your question, the way that we even approach design, we always say, and I believe designers also understand this, you design a space for people to live in. So that space is for them to be comfortable to be in that space. So when you are designing that space, it really has nothing to do with you, but the end user, right? So the first thing that you have to then understand is, okay, who are these people? How do they live their lives? How do they get about their daily routines? So that the design fits to them. And then that is how you basically start to challenge
status quo.
Exactly. Because there are set ways that, some people, they wake up, brush their teeth, then eat breakfast. Some people eat breakfast, then brush their teeth. But that person has their own way of doing things as an individual. Therefore, we cannot create a standard and we say this is how we must all do things. But you must understand that people are their own individuals and they have a way that their approach isn't.
I almost stopped you so many times because I'm like, I want to add on to this. This is how I'm disrupting myself. I'm learning to bring myself towards myself. Okay. And for me, you've said a lot of valid points which I agree with. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you keep touching on the person who is then wanting to make the change. And I think that's why I included by disrupting yourself in the topic. Because for me, it's that you need to know where you are and accept where you are before you can actually be able to then make a change that will influence the next person. It's not an outside looking in thing most of the time, right? Because if you are now saying, Hore, this is how architecture has been happening. So you will maybe briefly take us through the industry that you're in, the history of it, and how are you then disrupting yourself and then influencing the position the space that you are holding right now, you know?
Fine.
Because for me, it's always, forget the blame. Forget, Hore, we are here because of whatever has happened. We are here now. This is where we are. This is the present.
Yes.
Now the point is to disrupt, which I find it fascinating because disruption has always been seen as such a negative word. But a definition I read, sorry, I wrote it down here so I don't forget it, from a Harvard article, Harvard Business It says disruption uproots and changes how we think, behave, do business, learn, and go about our day-to-day lives. You know what I mean? So for me, it's the thinking, it's the person, and then knowing where you are and where you want to go, and how you then change will be for you, for the next person, or for the people coming after you. So how have you guys disrupted yourselves, and was there a need? How did you identify that need? And how are you disrupting architecture?
Okay. I think that disruption part of ourselves, it wasn't even a disruption more than it is an understanding of what one, I am African. Two, there are certain cultures and traditions and ways and behavioral patterns that we've been sort of groomed up to understand.
Yes.
And then you are introduced into this space that introduction did not touch into who you are, where you've grown up. And therefore that space then almost alienates you unless you adopt what that space comes with.
Yeah, the status quo.
Exactly.
Basically, yeah.
So unfortunately, again, as Umsabeni, we understand who we are. We understand ukuthi, look, at the end of the day, indoda yomxhosa udlanga amandla utola uzulu.
Tata, yeah.
Ungonyama. And this does not speak to me. So how much more the next person? How much more the individual who's leaving their house to go to town, for example? And everything that they see around them. Remember, architecture is literally all around us.
Yes.
Be it landscaping, interior, be it actual buildings. It's all around us. We see it every single day. So how much more the individual, or Pomikas, you know, or not even a Kasi, from a rural settlement.
Yeah.
And they have their own African identity. Because they are African. And they drive and they go to, let's say, Sandton, for example, and cannot identify with any of these things because it's not African. It doesn't speak to us.
So it's the status quo is okay as long as the perception, basically the perception, because from one end, the person will be like, no, I'm good. You know, the way things are done currently is the way things should be done. But a different perception, what you're saying, is a person looking at it as like, but this says nothing about who I am. From where I'm standing, I can't relate with what you're saying.
Basically, to a degree, I'm agreeing with what you're saying, but I do want to also qualify your statement. So you have an individual who has gone through life, and there are certain things that have traumatized them that have to do with certain patterns.
Okay.
Now they leave their house to go to town, and all they see are these things that remind them that actually you are African, but you are not at home. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's deep.
So
like what though? Like you don't need that a person would see and be like, I'm not seeing anything that represents me, therefore it needs to change.
It's as simple as this, actually. We could just take a regular building. So you said I must touch on the history of architecture and where we are. So I'll do a quick summary so that you understand my thought process. So a very, very quick summarized history of architecture. Dating all the way back, we can go all the way back to, say, the medieval century, up until now, our postmodern era. All of those different times and periods changed because certain individuals dared to say, but why? For example, moving from the Baroque era to the classical era, and moving from there to like Gothic, and moving from there to modernism, people asked questions. They said, why?
Why?
Do you understand? They said, why? And then that is how things started changing. Do you understand? So to a point where now we are in a postmodern paradigm, for example, and in this postmodern paradigm, there are questions of identity, for example. The question would be, what is identity to a person in a postmodern paradigm? Because one, you're dealing with different cultures that have now come together. You have different races that have now come together. Historically, it was never like that. You know, different cultures were doing their own thing, different races were doing their own thing, and so forth and so forth. And now we have all these people
kind of merged.
Who have merged. So then what becomes of that identity? Do you understand? Which is why now I'm saying that person who is African comes out and they see something that is Western, for example, and they can't identify with it because there aren't little characteristics that speak to them. For example, we as Africans, we were very, we love art. We love expressing ourselves through dance, through music, through this, through that. So when then you come to an environment that almost, I'm going to use Sandton again actually, why not? I started with that. We call Joburg a concrete jungle. Yes. Why? Because literally the whole place, you just have buildings. And it's cold. And it's very cold. It's cold. It's very cold. And I moved here. Yeah. And over and above that, the most of the architecture that is expressed there is very universally based. It's what you could call catalog architecture. You can take that thing and place it anywhere. It is not unique to where it is. It does not take a regionalist approach in that it's not birthed from where it sits. Yeah. I'll give you an example. Anytime let's use a person. Let's say a person is a building, right? So a person has a way that they like to dress. A person is going to be exposed to climatic issues. Yeah. And the person is going to have things that they like and that they do not like. Yeah. So in order for me to then design clothes that are going to be suited for you, now you as a metaphor are now the site, for example. I need to understand you. I need to understand what it is that you like, what you don't like, etc., etc., etc. Then it is, then that design literally speaks for you as an individual, and it is birthed out of that place. So, an example of that in history is what you call regionalism, where materials and just the understanding of the climate in that area, the understanding of what is around in the environment, those become informants of what the design will look like. And then it is given birth. Okay. And it is very specific to that place.
So is that what you guys are then doing?
That is
change. And is it so I actually wanted to almost ask you, is disruptors and innovators like the same thing? In the sense that, because someone would be like, okay, that's an innovative way of thinking about it. You know, to say, okay, you must come and look at the land and think about the history and think about the person and change your perception, right? Because I feel like people always think that disruption is rattling, which is not always the case, you know, and I think we're agreeing to that. So for you guys, what do you think you would say, this is how we came into this way of things being done this way, whether it's rigid or whether, you know, the best way is to have things modern looking. Yeah. And you have now said, no, actually, we don't want to do things like that. Okay. And have you had any challenges, sorry?
With that?
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. Okay, let me answer from the first question. Okay. So, do we approach every design like that, basically? Yes, we do. Depending, again, who the client is.
Mm.
Because we do have clients who, for example, I mean, we do some government work, for example, and they have certain, I'm calling certain standards of way of doing things, for example. And then what we then try to do when we come across that then is a challenge, for example. We say, okay, right, this is how you guys have been doing this thing based on A, B, C, and D.
Yeah.
And then what we always try to do is to show them, good, okay, actually, if you do it like this is what it's going to affect, this is what it's going to affect, and this is what it's going to affect. Could we rather not try to then take an approach that is like this? So what we do try to do, because we do face those challenges, like I'm saying, when we do, like, for example, government work, sometimes there is a certain typology that they're trying to go for and they're trying to push. And fortunately, once we are in that space, we're able to try and say, but at the end of the day, there's an end user and this is how they're doing things. So it means you then have to do your homework. It means you have to do thorough research and understand who the end user is in order for you to be able to even present that thing to them and say, could we not try to rather like this? I'll give an example. There's a project we are doing Mzumko, for example, now, and the project we're doing there literally speaks to the people of Umzimko. And what we did there is we had a whole team, and it's not just ourselves. We're working with another company, Emagate, called IDW. So they are architects, Emagate. So when we all came together to do the work, the municipality, Mzimkhulu, already had their own ideas of what they wanted.
Yes.
This is what we want, what. And then we had to show them, look, what you want is very stark. And what you want, no one is going to use this. Just because you are saying, must be a pavement that runs through here so that you're connected up. Meanwhile, people are walking this way every day.
But you're like, no, this way.
Let's redirect them.
This is the one.
That's not going to work. I think we've seen how people are. We've seen human behavior.
Yes.
I mean, it only makes sense to adopt what is innately there.
Yes.
So we had to do research. We had to literally go to the town, ask people questions, take pictures. We stayed there for about 3 days just observing, seeing how do people carry on with their daily lives. How do people... And we gathered information.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah, well, you have to put in the work in order for that to happen.
Yeah.
And we presented it to them. And they were like, wow, okay, in fact, reset, let's actually take it a step back. Let's go to, let's take this thing, see qua treasury, and actually say, you know what, let's amend the budget so that we can adopt this thing. And it wasn't for, because you're asking, do we come across challenges? Yeah, of course we do. Of course we do. And the only way that you're going to be able to get through to anyone is if you're willing to do the work, you're willing to do the research, and you're willing to be able to show to actually use an alternative based on this.
Use an
and
alternative.
yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, I'll give an example, again, the same project. The biggest thing that we wanted to do was to use the local people. We said, you do have people who do arts. You do have people who are doing crafts and all of those things. So instead of...
So incorporate those people instead of making it like a rigid...
Do you know why? Because you need a buy-in.
Yes.
You need people to own it. Most of Izindo that you do, they become vandalized because people do not relate to it. But people don't feel that they are part of it.
Yes.
So the moment you get it buy-in, you allow the locals to be the one. Let me, an example. One of the plazas, the design was to create an African mosaic. And it's the people from Mzimkhulu who are putting together the mosaic. Yes, because they know what they like. They know, we just gave a direction of an idea, and then we said, we are not going to dictate how you will make this mosaic. You know the culture of Mzimkhulu. Let it speak to your people. And those people are artistic. Those people are creative. We can't come and say, but just go Simzimkulu. They don't know how to do art. Who are we to say that? Those people are very creative and they know how to relate to their people. As a result, Iplaza is packed about. They enjoy the space because it speaks to them. And go and enjoy the space because it relates to them.
But now, and you can correct me here because I don't know much about your industry. I'm assuming it's built on history of how things have been done, right? And red tapes and checkpoint and people putting in rules of accreditation, you know. Is there anything you guys are doing to is there a need in a space like that? Do you ever look at it and be like, why is this necessary for this person to become an architect? Why is this necessary for this person to get the job done? You know, like, is there something that like you're looking at doing something like that?
All right, I want to make you laugh. So if you remember at the beginning of our conversation, I was mentioning that Umsabeni is an idea, and that idea becomes the baseline for everything else that we'd like to do and achieve. So one of the projects that we are currently working on is it's a voluntary association called Podium. So a podium, literally on the literal sense of podium, what do you do in a podium? You get to voice yourself out. So it was birthed out of, again, the frustration of knowing Oguti, they are very talented kids who are coming from very disadvantaged backgrounds, and they don't get those opportunities to study things like architecture. They don't get opportunities to study interior design or landscape architecture. And even those who do then try, it's an unfortunate thing, but systematically there's a great deal of I don't want to go into it, but there's a great deal of, I'm going to call it an oppressive state that is institutionalized towards, and it makes it sometimes very...
Towards what? You're talking about a podium, but now you're not voicing out to speak.
Fine, I'll speak. So it's unfortunate what architecture has been for years an elitist thing. And most of our young black people, and just black people in general, have not had the opportunity to be exposed to it. And those who have been, when they got the chance to get in and be in it, because it's so elite, there has unfortunately also been an idea that perhaps it belongs to a certain group of people. So who are these?
So political.
No, that's
politically correct on this Friday afternoon.
So unfortunately, when those type of mentalities are there, without that person even realizing, they actually close off opportunities for other people by virtue of, already when I see your design, I have a preconceived idea of what you know nothing about this thing. So by the time I'm looking at it, I'm not even judging it from
because you're following the book.
I'm not. That's it. I'm not even judging what you are doing based on anything, but based on who am I looking at.
Yes.
So that frustration, unfortunately, resonated with us because I feel I'm not just speaking for myself, but even those who are at school right now, those who are busy with their degrees and so forth, they know what I'm talking about. Tough architecture. And the toughness is not even the fact that the work is challenging. No, you have to first beat the man who has got an idea about when you don't know this thing because you know. Meanwhile, I'm a creative as much as the next person. So because of those things, we then signed up a VA
You must explain to the people.
All right. So every profession has an institute, right? And those institutes, basically, to a degree, they dictate what or how the practice should be. Then they create a code of conduct, and they create regulations and so forth, and then they take them up to a bigger board.
Okay.
In our case, for example, there's SACAP, and then in landscape there's SACLAP. That is then the biggest board, but the supporting of the institutes, your SIRES, your ELISA, and so forth, they support Ulanduk Usika. So those institutes, they have people who then register and sign up with them, and then we say you are recognized by SIRE, or you are recognized by ELASA. And then because you are recognized by these people, the client then trusts you more. Good, okay, you obviously are registered with this board, you are accredited, what. But what they don't know is that sometimes in those boards, there's very, very, very few majorities. There are more minorities than there are majorities. We are in Africa, so the majorities, you will walk with me. There are very few majorities. Therefore, some of the decisions that are made may not particularly speak for the majority. As a result, doors are then closed. So then a voice was needed to say, no guys, this is not right. People need an opportunity as well. So Podium then became a platform, and it's not just a platform. Unfortunately, it is now registered. It is recognized by SACLAP, and it is now building. So there, the idea is to give voice, to give opportunities for people who are studying, for people who are in the industry, for people who have not had that voice.
Is this in hopes of then changing
of course,
the rules?
Because remember, what then happens is, in order for certain rules or whatever to be amended, you basically, you literally go with mandate and you submit it, and then it is submitted to Parliament, and then that thing is either adopted or it is not adopted. So certain mandates have never been put together in order to challenge, because there was never an interest to do that. So now there's an opportunity to be able to do that, so that different type of regulations can now be in play that pretty much become fair for everybody.
So one of the things basically you're saying is that we must look at the regulations and see based on when it was first incorporated to now, is it still supporting the people that it is intended to support? Is it? Because when it was established, the group of people that it was established for versus now are different.
That's it.
So now you need to kind of be more inclusive in it. I sense him. And I say this because not a lot of people, how do you then would suggest a person does that? So you guys created the Podium, and that's where you're giving the voice, and hopefully then that will go back to the regulations to amend where possible.
Look, the whole process is very long and hectic, because we had to put together a constitution, we had to put together our own code of conduct, we had to put together our own regulations and rules and so forth, so had to get over 1,000 members. We had to, it's a lot.
But I mean, it's the work that needs to be put in to change.
That's what I was saying, Guti. You come across challenges, but if you are willing to put in the work, you are willing to do the research,
and you know why you're doing it. That's quite, I think, important.
Exactly, that also drives you. So the biggest thing, like I said, Umsaben is a base. It's an idea. It's more of an idea for, I don't want to call it emancipation, but but we used to code it. We used to say a lot of people are caged birds, and they are caged by finances. The moment you remove that cage, you'll be able to see the bird fly proper. And we are missing out on so much talent because of finances. So when we came up with Umsabeni, we said this is a base for people to be able to explore their dreams, and nothing holds you back once you know Goti. There's a whole backing behind you. You know, one guy I remember, Elvis, he said, "Hi, I want to sell Mkhodu and this." I said, you want
Mkhodu.
to? I'm telling you.
Wow.
Does
he make nice Mkhodu?
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something.
Why did you bring me Pella to taste? Then we can advertise now and girls, Mkhodu is the one.
So he said he wanted to do that, you know, and we always sit. We sit. We say, okay, look, do a presentation.
Yeah.
You know, because part of it is mentoring, part of it is teaching, part of it is correcting each other, so that we can become not just better versions of ourselves, but a better youth for the future.
Yes.
Who understand business, who understand how things are done and how you should do them, and so forth and so forth. So we literally will we'll create sessions. You sit, you bring your presentation, present. All right. So, Zitini imagines is up.
Yeah.
How much capital do you need to do this thing? Why that? Why not this one? And so forth and so forth until it comes together. Projects that we have currently. So, let's take from this project and finance it. So run with this project. Make sure this project is done. Make sure this project is 100%. We will support you as well.
That's actually very nice.
Just
yes,
know those funds are going straight to what it is.
What you want to do, because we take for granted how most of us, like not most of us, most people have an idea, but they don't know how to create a business out of it. And for me, that sometimes goes back to I was asking you earlier the difference between disruptors and innovators, because a disruptor can be an innovator, but an innovator is not necessarily a disruptor. You know what I mean? I digress. But I actually, when I was reading up, I saw something that says every circle, every square is a rectangle, but not every rectangle is a square. That messed with my mind a little bit. Anyways, I digress. So I thought I should share it with you. So my point is that just because I've got a brilliant idea, does not mean that I can carry it to fruition firstly. And a disruptor might have a brilliant idea or might just change what is currently happening differently. It's how you are then looking at it and how you are engaging with it and how you are English, like basically how you take it from where you are to, because it's not always about a personal outcome. It's hardly ever, disruptors hardly ever do something because it's going to benefit them. It's always about the next person. And I like that you guys do that and say, well, actually show me your margins, show me these are the things you need to know before you get into business. Is there a way that you can say disruptors have the same kind of mentality, and is this something that can be learned?
All right. One, I think in the context of your question, man, let me first just say something. I just want to take away the word disruptor.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, like you pointed it out, it unfortunately does have sometimes a negative connotation. Yeah, well,
I know, but I don't think we should though.
This is what I'm going to propose.
Okay.
We are deconstructing, rather. Let's call it that.
Okay.
Because in deconstruction, you get to what you do is you need to first understand what the crux of the matter is.
Hold that thought.
Yes.
Why are we running away from the words just cause they have a negative connotation?
I'll tell you why. It's the same thing as, unfortunately, we are, to a degree, in a almost very backward society. And if a guy has, let's say, there's a guy with a pink mohawk and he's got tattoos all over his face and his eyes are black, walks into the room, the first thing you're going to think is, oh, don't listen to this guy. And then he steps in, and this guy is actually the world's whatever.
Like an Einstein.
He's an Einstein.
But you don't know because he's got tattoos.
Exactly.
Okay.
So unfortunately, sometimes words have a way of creating an impression.
And shouldn't we then, as disruptors, change those connotations?
Well, that is the process that we are going through. And remember, in order for that to happen, it needs that guy to tattoo his face.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's a process.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm not necessarily banishing the word more than just qualifying it as well. Oguti, it's decon.
Okay.
That's all it is. It's a mentality of deconstructionism. And understanding Oguti, everything boils down to a fundamental text. And that text can be broken into so many variables. And then that's how you get to understand Oguti actually what is the history of this thing and where is it going. Well, before you take what you see at face value and decide, Oguti, this is what it is like. And basically that's the mentality and approach that we take.
You must go look.
Interesting. So to answer your question about innovators versus those who however, I do feel that the two really do complement each other. In fact, we could say it's one and the same thing, because to a degree, in order for you to innovate, you do need to question. Because innovation is not birthed from nothing. Innovation is always birthed from a question.
Yeah, but sometimes it's never a why is this the way it currently is.
But it might not be a why,
yes.
but
it might be like, why? Oh, that's a why. Why? I can't believe I did that. Because I was gonna say, why can't you fly? And the Wright brothers coming up with the thing. Okay, continue. Sorry.
Okay.
Apologies.
No problem. So it boils down to those questions basically, and then from there, and like I'm saying, nothing comes from nothing. Every idea that is in and around us comes from another idea. Whether you come and you make it better, or you completely change it, or you anything, nothing comes from nothing. Everything comes from something else. And it's a matter of seeing
this
them.
is progression,
That's
I
it.
suppose, yes.
That's it.
Because I was thinking of the simplest thing, the road, and I was like, but then someone had to walk that path, and then someone drove it, and then someone decided it must be smoother. Okay.
And eventually it will be magnetic.
Magnetic and will fly.
Exactly.
That's
so
will hover.
No, well, just about it. Yeah.
Hover.
So I'm just saying, Uti, nothing comes from nothing. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Are there any questions? No questions. Okay, so I quite enjoyed our conversation. Any advice on how a person should know when it's time to reinvent the wheel?
Actually, you know what's interesting about that question?
I almost forgot this question. This is a very good question. Abanga, if I didn't look at my notes.
Yeah, you know what I find interesting about that question? There's this analogy that I sort of try to adopt, and that is, if there's a tree in front of you and you have to climb it, you need to understand what kind of species are you, so that you can be able to climb that tree. So if I'm a monkey, it's going to be very easy for me to climb the tree.
Yeah.
If I'm a snake, I might battle a bit, but I might eventually climb that tree. But if I'm a turtle, it might just get very difficult for me to climb the tree. but you might find that I might flourish in something else.
Mm.
So again, it goes back to the idea of understanding who you are and always interrogating yourself so that you can at least try to understand your own strengths, your own weaknesses, and how you can then use that to propel you to the next level. So it's not always a matter of I'm trying and I'm trying and I'm trying and this thing is failing. There's something very interesting over September. He once said, I think it was 2014, he said, you must be able to cannibalize the core, which basically means sometimes you must be able to kill something for something else to be able to grow. So it doesn't necessarily mean that thing, because to cannibalize must literally eat it up. So it's still part of you. You're not necessarily vanquishing it and burning it and keeping away. It means what you've now gained understanding and knowledge from trying and trying and trying.
Sure, but cannibalizing, yes.
We have a question.
Okay.
So then it might be good for you to understand, but that process was not necessarily a waste of time, but it was just a preparation for something else.
Okay, I like that.
So Leo wants to know from you, what is your take on critical regionalism in architecture, and how can we best apply this approach to design?
Okay, very, very good question actually. So earlier on I spoke about regionalism, right? There's a counterpart to it, which is critical regionalism. And critical regionalism, actually, I didn't conclude when we were talking. It's a very, very integral part on how we approach design as Umsabi. Which means you are understanding technology, you are understanding the economics of the country or whatever, you are understanding the status quo, you are understanding the environment, you are very conscious of everything that is around before you then make a decision to carry on and make it design in a certain way. So those things also inform your design. So to answer that question, for me personally, I think critical regionalism, for me personally, is how you should approach design. Because one, that design, again, is birthed from that place.
Yeah.
It also understands that I am in a modern era. Therefore, it's not a bad thing to apply technology.
Yes.
It does also understand that the economics of the country's it. Therefore, maybe let me employ this kind of material instead of this one. It also understands Uguti, there are local people who can be able to supply this instead of me getting this from somewhere else. It also understands Uguti, at the end of the day, the end user is who is more important than the actual designer themselves. So
that's always quite critical. And I always say that as Imizizi, we offer client-defined quality services. And I say client-defined because what you define as quality versus what the next person defines as quality are two different things. So to your point is understanding the end user and then using everything around them and what you know to then give them the best of what you can offer.
in other words, you must be a critical thinker.
Yeah.
You must be a critical thinker and be able to then apply what is necessary to get that done. So that's my answer to that question.
No more questions. Thank you so much for the time and the beautiful conversation. I learned a lot. And thank you for everyone online who was watching. I want anything you want to leave them with besides the other, which was also very profound. But now we were this in between. When I was asking you about the tree and how you climbed it and knowing yourself, you good.
I think just to conclude from my side, I think more than anything else, and this is to the guys who are watching, let's just be really conscious that we are all different individuals.
Yes.
We come from different backgrounds, and therefore those are the things that make us who we are and special in how we approach it. So therefore it becomes very important for us to, anytime we are approaching any situation, to first be conscious of that and then decide on your response, etc., etc. And once we get to adopt that mentality, we then at least will move towards understanding what not everybody has been privy to be able to gain or whatever certain knowledge or whatever that it is. And therefore, let's be able to put a hand out and say, look, I'm here, let me assist you. What do you want me to do? Because again, I believe that is what being African is.
Yes.
Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
We don't learn from books.
No.
We learn from past down information, from stories,
Yes.
from all of those things.
Yeah.
Let's not kill that. Let's not destroy that. Let's understand what a person sometimes needs to be mentored. Let's understand that a person sometimes you must put in the time to make them understand how things are done, and don't just throw a book and say, I read this thing, because they might not even again relate to it.
Yes.
So what relates to Africans? Pass down stories. Let's pass down stories, guys. Let's teach other
down
people.
knowledge.
Yeah.
I love that. And in closing, I will take from a lot from what you said, knowing who you are, asking the whys. Everything that you now see was once a thought. So there's no reason why, if you want to do it, you shouldn't be able to do it. And the people who can help should always help. I always say this. I think being in a position to be able to help in any way, whether it's knowledge, mostly knowledge, and not doing it is the most selfish thing any person could do. So as we learn and as we grow, thank you again for tuning in, and thank you for always making this an interesting conversation and time. Enjoy your evening, your afternoon, your Friday, and your weekend. Bye.